face-to-face training, research-based principles and practices for writing instruction. So today's webinar is a train-the-trainer about how to deliver this training. It's not the training itself. As Ben said, my name is Jessie Stad. I am the project manager for the LINCS Professional Development Center. And today we have a few objectives. The first is that we really just want to give you a good sense of the writing training itself. We're going to go and provide a training overview so that you're familiar with the content of the training. And then Dianna will discuss the tips and strategies for the effective delivery of the training. As you can see, this webinar is the third in our summer training series that the Professional Development Center is offering. If you missed any of the earlier trainings, they, along with this one, will shortly be available on the LINCS YouTube channel. So if you're not familiar with that, we'll send a link out in the community practice as well. So you can share this webinar, this recording, with others at any point if there's ever someone in your network who needs to deliver this training and wants a refresher, either you or someone else, they can access this webinar at any point. So the PD Center is offering this series, these 4 online train-the-trainers, to all state and local trainers. Our intent is to provide content and training delivery information specific to this training that will enable webinar participants to deliver or support the delivery of the specific training in your own states or programs. So our intent is to start training other people on how to deliver LINCS trainings. So there are 2 ways, actually not 3 ways as it says on this slide, how you can access the training materials. First, if you pre-registered for today's event prior to noon or so, you should have received it in your email. If you haven't received it, you can send an email to the email on the screen, pdcenter@lincs.ed.gov, to request it. We'll be happy to send the training materials themselves. While you don't need the training materials to participate in this webinar, they may help as Dianna refers to them throughout. So states may be interested in delivering this specific writing training because of its connections to WIOA requirements. As you can see, WIOA requires states to provide adult ed providers with assistance around instructional practices based on rigorous or scientifically valid research available in writing, amongst other topics, obviously. And so this training could be a part of a larger strategy to help meet this requirement. So ideally, who should deliver this writing training? And obviously, we want somebody to deliver this that is knowledgeable about the writing process and its recursive nature, that this is an iterative process with experience in the adult ed classroom and using process writing in the adult ed classroom. Ideally, a trainer would be comfortable delivering information to peers. If you're not, you probably want to work on that before you volunteer to deliver a training. Anyone who has delivered a training know how important it is to be flexible, to be able to respond to participants' needs and questions, along with the ability to think on your feet, not only to answer questions and to work with content, but because every training is always a little bit different depending on who's in the room, your access to technology, room setup. There's always many factors that play in, and so it is important to be able to adjust as needed to best suit your purposes. So for those of you on the webinar, you may be interested in delivering this training yourself, and hopefully you feel that that these bullets describe you. But you may be somebody from a state or program who is interested in tapping into others to deliver this training. And so we would suggest using these bullets as a guide for when you are selecting those potential trainers. Next, there's also the question of who should be in this training, and there's not really any prerequisites to be a participant in this training. The prerequisites are just that you want to improve your writing instruction and you want your students to become more proficient and confident writers. Certainly this training could be a part of a larger effort that states could put together around writing instruction, but there are no specific qualifications for this itself. Okay, so at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Dianna Baycich, who some of you may know from her work with the LINCS Regional Professional Development 3. or at the Ohio Literacy Resource Center, or as a trainer in the field. Dianna is the Literacy Projects Coordinator for the Ohio Literacy Resource Center, and she was the developer of this training, so it just made sense to us to bring her in to talk to you about how to effectively deliver it. She has delivered this training in the field many times, and so is able to answer any questions you might have for effective delivery. So we'll stop periodically, but at any point, please go ahead and just type in the chat box if you have any questions we can answer. And then, of course, we'll also be able to continue the conversation in the state trainers community in the community practice. So with that, I will turn it over to you, Dianna. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jessie. So as Jessie said, this is an overview of the training. I'm going to talk about the content. This training is based on a 3-part study circle developed by Dolores Perrin to highlight research-based information about effective writing instruction for adults, especially those who struggle with the writing process. The content is drawn mostly from 2 publications, Developing Reading and Writing Next, and you'll see those a little later on. We'll talk more about those. Okay. So the objectives of this particular training, and PWBAT stands for participants will be able to. So after this training, these are the things that your participants should be able to do. And I show this slide at the beginning and the end of the training at the end as kind of a check for them to make sure they've met those objectives. The timing for this training, ideally a 90-minute session or maybe even a little bit longer. That allows time for some discussion. The training is designed basically as an informational PowerPoint presentation. So there's not a lot of interaction, but there are some places where there can be some discussion. In addition to the slide deck for this training, there is one 3-page handout that can be double-sided. And I'll show you what that looks like and explain that in a couple of slides here. All right. The agenda for the training is pretty basic. I welcome folks, do the links overview, explain these to the handout, do the presentation, take questions and answers, and hand out the evaluation. After I welcome participants, I try to remember to ask them to turn off their devices. I know sometimes it's easy to forget to do that, so I usually offer a reminder. So there's just a portion of the graphic organizer I mentioned that's a handout that goes with this training. I explained to the participants that they can use this as kind of a way to self-assess their writing. So as I go through the principles and practices, or as you go through the principles and practices, participants can put a check there that they do this now. They can make some notes about that particular principle or practice. And then as time allows, this graphic organizer can be used to have participants discuss in pairs or small groups about things they're doing now, getting ideas from each other, and then also as a whole group discussion tool. The principles are kind of the overarching themes that guide the writing process. So they're presented first in this training. And I'll just take very briefly a few minutes and give a brief explanation of each of these: motivation, attributions, beliefs, and level of motivation for writing. That's really a big key there. Explicit instruction. Before I explain explicit instruction, this is your chance to use your feedback, your bullhorn, and if you, yes or no, if you know already the process for explicit instruction, go ahead and indicate yes or no. And if everybody is familiar with that, then no point in me boring you. And I know there's 14 of you on this, and I've only seen 4 responding so far. All right, again, the bullhorn is at the bottom right of your participant window. You just close that. Go ahead and click on the silhouette of the person up at the top with the lines, and that'll open up that window. Halfway there. All right. I guess we're going to have to stop at the halfway mark, and I see all yeses, so I'm going to assume that you're all familiar with that. Thank you for participating. Oh, there's a no. Okay, just in time. So for the one no, I will briefly explain that process for explicit instruction. It's also known as an I do, we do, you do. You start out by explaining the strategy that you're going to teach, why you're teaching it, when students use it. You're going to model how that strategy is used for the students. The whole class is going to practice that strategy together with lots of support from the teacher. Then students, once they get the idea of that, small groups or pairs will use that strategy. And then finally independently, and then reflect on the use of that strategy, which can be used as a self-assessment tool. And those steps may need to be repeated. Targeting specific difficulties, so don't teach everything to everyone. Individualized instruction with materials that are at the right level of challenge. Opportunities to practice, more time spent on writing in different contexts, in different genres for different purposes. Promoting transfers of skills, so again, writing for different purposes and using lots of authentic reasons for writing and writing to authentic audiences. Integrating reading and writing. Research shows that working in one can improve the other. And then teach the foundation skills if necessary until they become automatic, things like handwriting and keyboarding. The next section of the training talk about the 11 elements of effective writing instruction. And these are found to be effective for helping adolescent students learn to write well and to use writing as a tool for learning. All the strategies are supported by rigorous research, but that even when all these are used together, they do not constitute a full writing curriculum. And you might want to caution participants, don't try and do all these at once. Pick one or two to work on. And again, I'll very briefly define these for you. So writing strategies involve teaching students strategies for planning, revising, and editing their compositions. Summarization involves explicitly and systematically teaching students how to summarize texts. Collaborative writing, using instructional arrangements in which students work together to plan, draft, revise, and edit their compositions. Specific product goals, that would be assigning students specific reachable goals for the writing they are to complete. Word processing, using computers and word processors as instructional supports for writing assignments. And at this element, you might think about pausing and asking your participants how many of them actually have access to computers or some kind of word processing tool in their classrooms, just to kind of get a feel for how that looks. Sentence combining, involves teaching students to construct more complex, sophisticated sentences. Pre-writing activities, engaging students in activities designed to help them generate and organize ideas for their composition. Inquiry activities, engaging students in analyzing immediate concrete data to help them develop ideas and content for a particular writing task. The process writing approach, and that interweaves a number of writing instructional activities, kind of a workshop environment, extended writing opportunities, writing for authentic audiences, personalized instruction, and cycles of writing. The study of models, providing students opportunities to read and talk about and then emulate models of good writing. And then writing for content learning, uses writing as a tool for the learning of content material. At this point, check to see if there's any questions that need to be addressed before I move on. And I don't see any in the chat box. Ben, anything coming?
No, no questions so far.
Okay. I've either put them to sleep or they know most of this already. All right, to prepare for this particular training, I'm going to walk through a few tips and then give a little bit extra explanation on some of the slides that may puzzle you when you see them. So the background materials and the links for these will appear in the chat box, and facilitators should become familiar with the content in the writing section of developing reading and writing. And if you want to delve deeper into writing instruction, you can go to the big book, Improving Adult Literacy Instruction, where it kind of get down into the weeds with that one. And once you've clicked on the link there, it will you can access both of those. And then the other background material is Writing Next, and again, Ben will put the link for that. And you need to be, or you should be, familiar with the 11 elements of effective writing instruction. And there's a summary and then some at the front listing the 11 elements, and then some more descriptive pieces as you read on. All right, things to do before the training. And these are things that should be taken care of at least a few days before the training happens. And I'll be quiet for a minute so you can take a look at that. All right, and now a little bit about the delivery of the training, and this is where I have some extra explanations on some of the slides. So when you take a look at the slide deck for this training, you'll notice that I don't have a lot of words on the slides. They're mostly pictures. And the reason I do that is that participants reading slides and also listening to a presenter don't really get the information as well as if they're doing one or the other. So it's more effective to either read the slides themselves or listen to the facilitator. And just from feedback I've gotten in my own personal experience, Participants usually don't like to have slides read to them. And I feel that having a related graphic or illustration attracts people's attention a little bit more. So in this case, I could put up on the slide, don't teach grammar as an isolated skill, or the big red circle over a grammar book, which I think attracts people's attention and kind of makes them perk up a little bit and want to know what's going on here. In the notes section of each slide, there are suggested talking points, but these are by no means a script. So it's critical to know the content of the background material so that you can offer participants in-depth explanations of the principles and practices in kind of a conversational manner. All right, some explanations. In the section on explicit instruction on that slide, I mentioned it when I was explaining explicit instruction before, it's a reflection step. Most times when you're reading and learning about explicit instruction, that step isn't mentioned. But I think it's a good step to include, and that's why I include it in this training. It gives participants and teachers a chance to, or students and teachers a chance to think about, gee, did this strategy work? If not, why not? How can we fix it? Or maybe need to teach another strategy. So that is just the reflection step. It gives the teacher a chance to know if more clarification or instruction is necessary. Give the students a chance to think about their own learning. On the slide about promoting transfer of skills, it refers to a Victoria Purcell Gates study affecting change in literacy practices, impacts of 2 dimensions of instruction. And I'd like to mention this study. It was conducted across 22 states in 83 adult literacy classrooms with 159 adult literacy students. And the results showed that adult students who were in literacy classes where there was authentic materials for authentic purposes showed more positive changes in their literacy practices outside the classroom than students in classrooms where it was very skill-based, teacher-centered rather than being more student-centered. Ben has put links for the study and then a companion piece, kind of the how-to book, Creating Authentic Materials and Activities for the Adult Literacy Classroom. For the writing strategies slide, I used examples of self-regulating strategies. If you're not familiar with those, they are ways that teachers can help students stay on track for their writing. There's some information in the Teal Just Right guide, and Ben's going to put that link there. Let's see, 2 pages where there's some information about self-regulating strategies, page 29 and page 40 in the Teal Just Right guide. And the analogy I've seen used and that I use myself is that individual strategy, so that would be like brainstorming or outlining using a graphic organizer, those kinds of things. Those individual strategies are like the bicycle you use to get to where you're going, and the self-regulating strategies are the map you use to tell you how to get there. So take a look at the Teal Just Right guide for more information on self-regulating strategies. On the slide about the process writing approach, I talk about publishing the forgotten step. Most times when you're reading or learning about the writing process, especially for adults, publishing isn't mentioned, but at least in Ohio, we have seen that publishing can be a powerful motivator for students to want to write well and improve their writing. So it's something as simple as putting it on a bulletin board, making a class anthology, putting on a blog on the program's Facebook page, anything like that that can get your students sharing their work with others, reading it out loud to other students. So it makes them care about it. All right, so at this point, I will take any questions. And I see the link's not working for that one guide, so we'll find the correct link and get that. If anyone has any questions about this training at this time, I'd be happy to answer them. And if you think of something later, please feel free to email me. I'm happy to answer questions. And if you have questions, type them in the chat box to all participants. Does a discussion of differentiated instruction come up during this training? No, it does not. That wasn't built into the training. I know that's certainly an important aspect of any kind of instruction. Due to the time constraints, we didn't get into that, but certainly, you know, if that came up, you know, either using what knowledge you have, or certainly I've offered to email participants answers to questions that I couldn't answer right there in the training. Any other questions out there? All right, I will turn it back to Jessie, and I thank you all for your kind attention.
Thanks, Dianna. So again, if you didn't receive the training materials that I sent out earlier, please you can send an email to pdcenter@links.ed.gov, and we'll be happy to send that to you. The other thing you can send, if you need proof of participation today, you can send me an email directly. I'm typing it into the chat at jstad@manhattanstrategy.com, and that's again for those of you who need confirmation that you did participate in today's training. So I invite those of you who are members of the State Trainers Group, and even those who are not, I invite you to join the State Trainers Group. And if you have ongoing questions about this training, that is a great place to ask them, and then we'll be sure we monitor that site and are sure to answer any questions. So Ben, if you don't mind putting it to the very last slide. No. There we go. So if you don't mind, before you go today, just completing today's survey for this webinar, you can follow the link. We'll put it in the chat box as well. There, Ben just put it in there. This again just helps us make sure that we're providing high quality trainings for you. So it's a very short training, about 2 minutes to finish it, and the information that you'll need is on the slide. So thank you so much for your participation. I hope that you are able to either yourself or working with other instructors to take this LINCS training, which you know to be a high quality, vetted, research-based professional development opportunity, and to expand the numbers of adult education instructors who are able to access it through delivering it in your own state or program networks. So again, thank you so much for joining us today, and this webinar will be available on the LINCS YouTube channel in the next few weeks, I should say. So we'll stay on for just a few minutes if you have comments afterwards, but otherwise we'll see you in the State Trainers group. Have a great day. Thanks so much.